this part of the tutorial, we're going to talk about arrays in JavaScript, and here I've created a file called arrays.html, and here we're also going to create a JavaScript file and call it arrays.js. Right here, notice that it should be .js because we're going to refer to the arrays.js file. I'm also going to create a new file called arrays.js in order to write our arrays code inside of it. So generally, arrays in JavaScript are like so many of other languages, like Python. So in Python, we created an array like this, writing, you'd use square brackets, and then there are double quotes. So for example, I could have written the names of, for example, students. So we had, for example, James and for example, Cillian, and then it had Brad, Michael, and so on. So we also need to define it. So I should define, so for example, I can write const, and const is for constant variable. So if we want our array's elements to be constant and we don't want to change it, we use constant. Constant my array equals, you can write anything else instead of my array. That's the name and is arbitrary. Up to you what you want to name it. And here I can write console.log, and then I can write my array. I can save the code here, and then I can open up the file. So arrays.html, I run this on Google Chrome. So as always, we're debugging, so we're going to get into elements, and inside of the console log we've got the array. So array containing 4 elements, and the 4 elements are 0 James, 1 Cillian, 2 Brad, and 3 Michael. And the length is 4, so as you can see, it's got a method called length. So if you want to know how many elements it has, you can simply write arrays.element.length, and then you will be able to see the length of the array. Also, you will also be able to call the elements. So for example, you want to see what is the second element. So you can call the number 1 of the elements, and then it's Cillian. Or Michael, the third one. So let's try. You can write console.log my array, and then we want to know the last one of the elements inside my array. We also want to know the length. So before that, I can write console.log, and then inside of it I can write my array, and it's fine now. Okay, now arrays dot, and then we have length. So length, there we go. So this is my array. Okay, I think the name is fine, no problem with that. There should be an error. Let us see what the error. Could not find name my array. My arrays, so it's my array, not my arrays. Okay, so, and save the code, refresh the page to see the length. So it's not a function. Length here is not a function, so keep that in mind. So let's save the code, retry, refresh, and there we go. Here is 4 is the length of the array, and then we'll see the last one of the array, which is Michael. Right here I can also be able to see, for example, console.log So if you don't know the size of the array, you can write my array, and then you want to write the last one of the list, last one of the array. So my array, and then here you can write my array dot length, and here you can write -1 because it starts from 0. So if the length is 4, then the last one of the items has position number 3. So there needs to be here -1 to be correct. So save the code and refresh the page. As you can see, again, we have Michael. So up to now, we've learned how to write an array, and also my cursor is playing here. So we've learned how to write an array and how to find the length of it, how to access different elements, and how to find the last element of the array when we don't know the length. So if you want to add objects to the array, you can write my array dot my array, and then we have brackets, and then we want to add the 5th element, so you can write my array position number 4, and then you can add a name. So for example, Alice. So let's save the code, and then also console log the, again, it needs in console.log, and then my array. So let's save the code and refresh the page. So as you can see, the array is extended to Alice. Also, it has another element extended to the group of 5 people. So we also have Alice as the 5th of the elements, and if you let me cut and paste this one and see the last elements of the list after adding Alice to the list. So let me paste this one here, right here, and save the code, and then refresh the page. And you will be able to see that Alice is the last one of the list when we added the Alice to the last one of the array. So there we go. And here I'm saying that the list, but in Python usually we name the array list. So in Python we have arrays and also list, and list is one of the categories of the list, but here we call it simply array. So keep that in mind because the names are important. Also, if you want to know the type of array, notice that sometimes we also consider it as an object. However, as you know, objects were a little bit different. There were curly brackets, and then we used to have this column. So we had, for example, the first name, James, the last name, and so different keywords and values. But here it's just an array. So let's see the type of our array. So let's see what is the type of my array. So whether we have a type called array or it's just an object. There we go. So we can refresh the page, and as you can see, it's an object. It's not, there's no such thing as type called array. So we have object. So the type of an array is an object. So we can say that an array is an object. And however, write it this way. Const, for example, I can say const my object, and then we had the object like this. So for example, the first name, and then we had the value of this first name. For example, we had Brad, for example, not James this time, because most of the times we use James as a first name, because it's the first name that comes to my mind. I don't know why, but my name is not James, okay? just for the fun of it. So you can add objects are like that, but if you see an object is of the type object, it doesn't, a variable is of the type object, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily that kind of object, because an array could also be an object. Also, if you want to define a new array but you don't know the elements of the array, you can simply write const and then empty array or an array. No, and you can call it anything you like. So for example, I want to say, for example, names. It's just the array of the names. And then here you can write an empty array, and afterwards const names, you can add the elements that you like. So you can add the element like name, and then it should start with the first one. So because it has no element, it should start from 0. So the position 0 is a name, so this time it can be Sarah, not James. Sarah. And then names 1, it can be Angelina. Yeah, Brad and Angelina. And names, and then the second one could be equal to, yeah, here you can write Brad. Okay, so, and then I can console log the names here, names, and then save the code. So we should have an array this way, Sarah, Angelina, and Brad. So we created another array in a different method. There's also another way of defining an array. So so here I can write const, or I can write last names, and so I can also write const, but you know, it's not that much necessary to write const. It's just the way we've written up to now. So then I can write new array, and inside of the parentheses you can write the array itself. So this is an empty array, but if you want to add elements to this, you can write the names that you like. So for example, I can write here John and Andy, and then I can write some other name, so Mary, for example. Okay, so I can also write console.log another time, console.log, and then last names here, the last names, and then save the code, refresh the page, and then we'll be able to see that. This is another type of defining an array. So we've already introduced 3 ways. The first one is writing the array itself. The second one is to define an empty array and adding the elements to it. And then the other one is writing new array and then write the name, and you know, adding the elements inside of the parentheses. So let us check also the type of this one. So you might say that, okay, this could be an array, not an object. So let's save the code and see it together what the type is here. So it's, again, it's an object. So no matter how you write the array, it's going to be of the type object. There's no such thing, not such a type known as an array. So it's an object in JavaScript.